The Arizona sun beat down like a hammer, turning the main street into a river of shimmering heat. Dust rose with every wagon wheel, every hoof, every boot. The town was small and tired, its wooden buildings leaning together like they were too weary to stand on their own. At the center of it all sat the Broken Wheel Saloon, the only place where laughter tried to drown out despair. Caleb rode into town on a horse as worn and scarred as he was. He was a big man, tall and broad-shouldered, with years of dust and sorrow carved into his skin. His gray eyes looked older than his 37 years, shadows tucked deep inside them. He had fought in the war, survived battles that took better men, and lived through a fever that stole his wife and daughter. Since then, he had been drifting, drinking, and never staying in one place long enough to care. He tied his horse at the saloon and stepped inside. The air smelled of smoke, whiskey, and sweat. Sawdust crunched beneath his boots. He asked for a whiskey, his voice rough from the trail, and the bartender poured it without a word. That's when the trouble started. Across the room, a heavy man in a fine vest slammed his glass down and grabbed the wrist of a young woman in a faded blue dress. "You bring me another watered-down drink, girl, and I'll give you a lesson you won't forget," he barked. She tried to pull away. Her copper-colored hair fell loose from its pins, and her brown eyes flashed with anger even as fear tightened her jaw. "Mr. Hannigan, the whiskey's the same as always. Maybe you've had enough." The crack of his hand across her face silenced the saloon. She stumbled, caught herself on a table, and when she rose again, a red mark burned on her cheek. Caleb's gut tightened. She looked like the desert itself, stark, unbroken, fierce even when hurt. "Now that ain't no way to treat a lady," Caleb said, his voice low but steady. Every head turned. Hannigan released the woman and glared at the stranger. "This is none of your business, Drifter." "Funny thing about business," Caleb replied, setting his glass down slow and careful. "I make it mine when a man lays hands on a woman." The tension thickened. Hannigan's hand drifted toward his gun. Caleb didn't draw, didn't even blink, just stepped forward and caught Hannigan's wrist in an iron grip. With his other hand, he shoved the man toward the swinging doors. Hannigan stumbled out into the street, cursing and red-faced. "You'll regret this," he shouted. "You've just made the biggest mistake of your life." Caleb turned back. The room was silent, every eye on him. The young woman stared too, her cheek still burning, but her chin lifted in defiance. "You all right?" Miss Caleb asked. "I had it handled," she said, though her voice trembled slightly. "But thank you." Her father appeared from behind the bar, gray hair, broad shoulders, and a jaw set like stone. "Clara," he said sharply, "what's going on here?" "Nothing, Pa," she answered quickly, "just Hannigan being himself." The older man turned his gaze on Caleb. "And who might you be?" "Caleb McGraw," he answered, just passing through. "Well, Mr. McGraw, you've just made an enemy of one of the most powerful men in this valley. Hannigan owns half the cattle around here. He doesn't forgive, and he doesn't forget." "Neither do I," Caleb said. Clara's eyes lingered on him, unreadable but not cold. Something passed between them, a spark, a recognition. Caleb wasn't sure what it was, but it stirred something he thought long dead. He should have finished his whiskey and ridden out by morning. That was the safe thing to do. But instead, he rented a room at the hotel. He told himself it was because the stage line was hiring guards, and the pay was good. Deep down, he knew it was because of her. In the days that followed, Caleb began to notice things. The way Clara moved through the saloon with a grace that masked weariness. The way she smiled at customers, but never too warmly. The way her shoulders tensed when Lucas Graves, the richest rancher in the territory, entered the room. Graves carried himself like a man who owned not only cattle, but people, and his pale eyes lingered on Clara in a way that made Caleb's fists itch. One evening, Graves caught her wrist as she passed with a tray. "Miss Dawson," he said smoothly, "you and I need to discuss our future." Clara's eyes darted to Caleb's corner table. She gave the faintest shake of her head. Then she pulled free, her voice even, "I'm working, Mr. Graves." Another time. "Your father's debts won't pay themselves forever," Graves murmured, before finally letting her go. Later that night, Caleb found Clara wiping down tables after the crowd had left. He walked closer, his voice quiet. "Is he giving you trouble?" She gave a humorless laugh. "Lucas Graves doesn't give trouble. He is trouble." "But that's none of your concern, Mr. McGraw." Quote, "Caleb," he corrected softly. Her eyes flicked to his, a spark of surprise breaking through the tiredness. "You see more than most men," she said. "Most only see a saloon girl. You see past that, their gazes locked." For the first time in years, Caleb felt something like hope stir in his chest, and that's when everything began to change. The days passed, each one weaving Caleb deeper into Dust Creek's troubles, and deeper into Clara Dawson's orbit. He had signed on as a stage guard, riding shotgun on gold runs through dangerous country. The pay was steady, the danger real, and it gave him a reason to stay. But no amount of work on the trail could stop his mind from circling back to Clara. He thought of her when the desert sun scorched his skin, when the nights grew cold under a blanket of stars, and most of all when he walked back into the broken wheel and saw her moving through the smoky saloon like a flame refusing to die out. But he wasn't the only one watching her. Lucas Graves loomed like a shadow. His money owned half the valley, and his influence reached into every corner of Dust Creek. The sheriff was in his pocket, the courts bent to his will, and the townspeople avoided crossing him. Graves had his eye on Clara, and unlike other men, he wasn't content to simply watch. The news broke one morning with the force of a hammer blow. Lucas Graves had called in Tom Dawson's debts. Every dollar owed on the saloon had suddenly come due. No payment meant ruin, and Graves offered only one way out: Clara's hand in marriage. Caleb heard the whispers before he saw her. When he finally found Clara behind the saloon, she sat on an overturned barrel, her hands buried in her face. She looked up at his approach, her eyes rimmed red. "Congratulations," Caleb said bitterly. "Word is, you're engaged." She laughed, but it was sharp and broken. "Engaged? Is that what they call it when a woman is sold like cattle?" "My father owes Graves more money than he'll see in 10 lifetimes. Lucas made his terms clear. "He gets me, or we lose everything." "You don't have to go through with it," Caleb said. Her voice cracked. "Don't I? What choice do I have? Where would I go? What would I do? I'm a saloon keeper's daughter with no money and no future." "There are always choices," he said firmly. "Easy for you to say." She whispered, "You're a man. You can ride away any time you please. I can't." "Yes, you can," Caleb said, his voice steady. "With me." She froze, staring at him like she hadn't heard right with you. "I'm offering you a way out," he said. "Not a cage, not chains, just freedom. You don't deserve to be owned by any man." Her eyes filled with tears. She stepped closer, searching his face. "Why? Why do you care what happens to me?" He wanted to tell her everything. That she reminded him of his wife's kindness, of his daughter's laughter. That she stirred something in him he thought long buried.